Marion Fellows.
Thank you, Mr Rossendale, and thanks also to Mr Walker, our previous chair. I could stand here and thank all the members individually who have contributed so much to this debate, but I'll refrain from doing that. I just want to thank them collectively, and one or two of them especially. And first of all, the member for Aberavon for securing this debate with the backing of other fellow colleagues on the APPG on steel. Ravenscraig, in my constituency of Motherwell and Wishaw, was once the beating heart of the European steel industry. And on closure, much of the plant was sold to China. The Ravenscraig site is still mostly a barren wasteland. And this is an issue we still deal with on a daily basis. All that remains of our steelworks is the DL plant, only minutes from my office, and Clydebridge Works in the constituency of my friend, my honourable friend, the Member of Parliament for Rutherglen and Hamilton East. As well as providing jobs to the communities across Lanarkshire directly and indirectly for generations, our steelworks are a source of pride. Some of the finest steel in the world was produced in Motherwell, and still was until recently. For people in Lanarkshire, our steelworks are iconic and represent decades of industry, the foundations of our community. Our legacy is now in danger, and so too is the legacy of towns in both England and Wales, who too have a proud industrial past. The reaction of the UK government to the crisis we face will determine whether or not steel will merely be a memory in our towns and villages, or if it will be an industry that can remain for generations to come. The Scottish Government has some of this responsibility as well. However, I believe both governments starkly contrast one another in their reaction to the steel crisis. The Scottish Government reaction within 4 days of the announcement of DL and Clydebridge's closure, they set up a steel task force, I'm a member of it, to find a buyer for the plants, emphasising our commitment to strengthening and building our steel industry, but also wider manufacturing sector. Working with Community Unite, GMB, Tata Steel, Skills Development Scotland, Scottish Enterprise, Transport Scotland, the Scottish Environmental Protection Agency, the UK Government, North and South Lanarkshire Councils, and the STUC, and others. Yes, the Scottish Government has vowed to leave no stone unturned in finding a new owner for our steelwork. They have invested £195,000 in a support package to retain and upskill key staff to ensure that plants can reopen quickly as and when production resumes. Working with Skills Development Scotland, these workers will also be upskilled. This training will provide them with a mix of skills in varying fields, including management and new processes. For workers who have unfortunately worked their last shift at DL and Clydebridge, the Scottish Government has created a scheme to get ex-steel workers back into work through the Partnership Action for Continuing Employment scheme, PACE. The Scottish Government has agreed with the Business Rates Assessor to ensure that the state of the business will be taken into account in the 2017 revaluation. The Lanarkshire Joint Valuation Board is open to agreeing and pre-agreeing the 2007 valuation with any new operator to save the plant hundreds of thousands of pounds. They've also looked at the efforts of other steelworks to reduce energy costs using renewable energy and investment in energy-efficient furnaces. Scottish Enterprise has been invaluable in this process and has been working with Tata since before the plant's closure in an effort to bring down energy costs. Holyrood has almost exhausted the powers available to it to aid our steel industry. Already 2 potential buyers have expressed an interest in our Lanarkshire plants, which is surely testament to the hard work of the Scottish Government's Steel Task Force. We recognise that it is essential that our domestic economy is diverse so that it can provide employment to those with differing skill sets and aspirations, and not just those with the skills for the service sector. Steel in particular is an essential strategic resource required for a range of purposes. And I thank the honourable member for Middlesbrough and East Cleveland for referring to both Scottish plants and the contribution they make in this regard. However, the importance of steel in realising these interests are continuously ignored by the UK government. Time and time again, they fail to take the urgent action required and put further steelworks at risk, as per Port Talbot, Redcar, and other plants which are extremely vulnerable and have suffered great losses. The Scottish Government has made tremendous efforts to find a new owner for the Dale and Clyde Bridge works, but the powers to resolve the underlying problems facing our steel industry don't lie in Edinburgh, they lie here in London. For years, trade unions and the steel sector have warned both this government and the previous one about the fragility and challenges affecting the steel sector, but these challenges and these warnings have fallen on deaf ears. Dumping of Chinese inferior steel in the markets and extortionate energy prices has crippled the steel industry. Even now, the British government merely responds too little and too late to aid our steel workers. They have finally gained EU approval for rebates under the Energy Intensive Compensation Scheme, but where's the cash? I'd like to remind the House that there was no such delay in intervening to save the lavish lifestyles of London bankers. And there is no urgency to save the livelihoods of steelworkers in Lanarkshire and across the rest of the UK. Last year, the Prime Minister welcomed the Chinese President to the UK in order to seek ever closer ties and discuss trade as our steelworks went into meltdown. He gave only the promise that he would raise the issue of Chinese steel being dumped in Europe and gave no indication as to how strongly he would defend our steelworks. We should not be seeking to open our markets further to China or allowing China to gain market economic status, as alluded to. I'd like to continue at the moment. As alluded to by the member for Aberavon. To do so makes it near impossible for our workers to compete. This pits worker against worker in an impossible race to the bottom. I raised the question of whether the government has sought to address this imbalance by strangling our trade unions and attempting to repeal the Human Rights Act, all in the hope that we may finally be able to compete with the Chinese, who have an atrocious record on workers' rights. The Tories have embarked on an ideological crusade to roll back the state and to deregulate our economy, allowing big business and executives to decide what is important to the country and what is not. I'll take an intervention.
I thank the Honourable Lady for giving way. Does she see, part of the future for Dale and Clyde Bridge, the integrated nature between Scunthorpe, Dale and Clyde Bridge being maintained in order that we retain virgin steel creation within the United Kingdom?
I thank the Honourable Member for intervening. I think there is an issue about whether Dale and Clyde Bridge will be actually maintained by one of the buyers as part of the deal to buy the long products. I think it would be important, but the real issue that they face is rising costs, and this is what the Scottish Government has been trying very hard to cover. Yeah.
Yes. The reason why I say it is the integrated nature of long products sustains each mill. It is, in effect, one site spread over a geographical distance, and in many ways reflects the United Kingdom. That's why I'm saying, does she feel it's important that we keep the blast furnace link from Scunthorpe to the Dale and Clyde Bridge, so that we can help sustain virgin steel being made in blast furnaces within the United Kingdom?
I think, to answer the Honourable Gentleman, I have doubts, I have issues with that. I do want it to continue, but I do want Dale and Clyde Bridge to be able to continue in any case, because it may be that the best route for them is another road if someone doesn't want to buy the whole long product division. It's the laissez-faire approach that already referred to that is endangering our steelworks and indeed our manufacturing base. And I would hope that the Prime Minister's future negotiations on the UK position within the EU, that he seeks radical reform to state aid rules and for states to have the ability to favour domestic products in the tendering process already referred to. As the Honourable Member for Aberavon has said, the Secretary of State needs a map to find Europe, while Scottish ministers are battering the door to represent fishing rights, for example, for the UK, where they have real expertise and experience. I don't believe the UK government is constrained from developing and bolstering a strong steel sector. I believe what constrains the UK government from saving our steel is their priorities, mainly raising their military profile, cuts to our public services and tax cuts to the richest, while the poor are hammered. Although the Prime Minister was willing to grant an audience with the Chinese President and Lincolnshire MPs when asked to meet with Lanarkshire MPs, he gave no such courtesy. I very much enjoyed my meeting with the Minister in his stead, and I thank her for her time. However, this government shows contempt for steel workers in Scotland. In an address to this place, the Business Secretary failed even to mention the Scottish plants. More recently, Madam, Mr Rossendale, the Business Minister even referred to the UK steel industry as consisting of basically Scunthorpe and Port Talbot and other bits and bobs. Those other bits and bobs are a source of pride and livelihood from communities from Motherwell to Redcar to Port Talbot and all across the UK. I hope for the sake of my constituency that a new owner is found for our steelworks. The Scottish Government has gone to unprecedented lengths to secure a future for Scottish steel. I give my sympathies to people elsewhere facing a similar uncertain future. This Government should note that in Scotland, people are watching this Parliament that saw no issue or hindrance in bailing out bankers, while they see only roadblocks to intervening to save our steelworks, allowing a core industry of my community and this country to crumble. I hold, and I will find it, I hold in my hand a copy of the strategic framework for supporting the steel sector in Scotland. The UK government should have an equivalent. Do they? I don't think so.